Hi, I'm your host, Ray Dogum, and welcome to VibeCast. VibeCast is VibeBio's weekly podcast where we explore some of the hottest topics in drug development, community building, investment strategies, and technology innovation. Our guests today are the co-founders of the Boston Epigenics Society, John McShane and Bryan Vought I. We'll be talking about their experiences and how the Boston biotech community is thriving. So Bryan, John, thank you so much for joining me today. Can you please start by giving the community a background about yourselves and sort of what brought you here today?
Sure, absolutely. So my name is John McShane. I studied molecular biology undergraduate and then received a degree in biotech management. And I've been working in biotech, mainly epigenetics and next-gen sequencing for the last 12 years, turning on 13 years, but who's counting? But yeah, been very deeply involved in the biotech community in both San Francisco, New York, and Boston. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, and I'm Bryan Vought I. Work at Ring Therapeutics. I'm director of the in vitro biology group, where we work with primary and stem cell derived human cells. I've been in the biotech community for going on 25 years now, mainly in the areas of biochemistry, biophysics, and then cell biology.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, guys. I appreciate it. So let's get started with maybe even defining what epigenetics is. So, let's start with why you started the Boston Epigenics Society, and then we'll talk about what epigenetics is for people who might not be familiar with the science behind that. As I understand it, this organization was founded when COVID was sort of happening. Can you guys dive into that a little bit?
So, they always say necessity is the mother of invention. And during the pandemic, there was this, I think, real hold on getting together and exchanging ideas and networking. So I think the idea kind of came about. Bryan and I were having a beer, and we were like, man, we really wish we could get people together and exchange ideas. Let's see. I have a big group of people that I work with. Let's see if we could bring them together virtually, and trying to overcome some of these obstacles that we were facing, and kind of an unprecedented time where bars were closed, you couldn't walk inside different universities without certain credentials. And what we really tried to do was bring the virtual experience that you'd get in Kendall Square any other day back. And I think we had a really good attempt of doing that, bringing on a great speaker initially with David Sinclair, and coming right out the gate with getting people excited about epigenetics and networking.
We were trying to figure out how to bring people together, and originally it started out as just webinars, and then as the pandemic eased, then we started with social gatherings, trying to physically bring people together. And now as the society continues to grow, we're thinking about how we grow that even further. So we'll continue to have webinar events, and one of the things that surprised us was that every webinar we've had people from all 6 continents. We haven't had Antarctica represent yet, but aside from Antarctica, we've had people from all over the world join us for the webinars, and that's been a surprising event. And we don't want to discourage that. So I think we'll continue with the webinars, but we would like to supplement it with additional in-person gatherings and trying to figure out how to best do that as we grow.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. If you think about science as a broad topic, it's inherently a collaborative activity, right? You build science on top of previous science. So people are an essential part of that equation. You need them to come together, communicate, share ideas, criticize each other, which is another important part about science. So that's fantastic. Can you describe why the focus on epigenetics? Was there a personal interest for you guys around epigenetics?
Epigenetics was just initially what Bryan and I were working on together. We were working on chip projects. I think we were working on projects with histone acetylation. But yeah, I think the main reason why epigenetics was that was what I'd been studying and working on for a while, and that's what I know. Bryan, you're not a traditional epigeneticist, but you had fallen into epigenetics, and we'd gone down the rabbit hole together.
Well, one of the things that had jumped out to me was I hadn't grown up around epigenetics, and as I was on projects that were epigenetic based, I started looking deeper into it. And a quote that I like is that humans are nothing if well folded. And by that, I mean that if you took all of the DNA from a single cell and stretched it out from end to end, it would be around almost 7 feet long. So if you think about all the cells in our body, it's epigenetics that folds them and activates certain genes and turns other genes off. And coming from a stem cell background where you start from a pluripotent state and then you go down this lineage, and then you have one cell that then becomes your entire circulatory system and heart. You have another cell that goes on to become your brain and all the nerves. And all of this is regulated by epigenetics. It turns on and off certain gene programs to differentiate into different types of cells. And if you think about what makes us human, we're 99.9% similar to apes, but epigenetically, we're very different. And it's that turning on and off genes at the right time, which is exquisite. And when you think about how dysregulation could happen, it opens the world to a lot of disease opportunities. I think it's a frontier of disease and treatment space. And there's lots of opportunity within epigenetics. So thinking about the human kinome and kinases, there's a certain percentage of drugs that are target the kinome. And then if you think about the number of epigenetic targets, only a fraction of those have even been probed yet. So we're at the tip of the iceberg in terms of being able to unlock human health through epigenetics. And I think promoting this field and helping to foster connections that could allow it to grow could unlock a vast potential in terms of human health and therapy.
Yeah, that's very well said. I mean, if you think about it, it's really the study of how a person's environment, behavior can affect the way that their genes work. So it's very interesting and relevant to us every day. So it's very interesting.
Not only their own environment, but some epigenetic marks are even passed down from generations. Whatever your ancestors were doing could also be passed down epigenetically to you. Quick evolutionary changes. You can see if people survive famine, stress, all sorts of things are passed down epigenetically.
So what sort of value does the BES, or Boston Epigenics Society, bring to its members and its sponsors?
Primarily, we're trying to shine light on the opposite field. So there's many in academics, particularly postdocs and grad students, who are very interested in industry, and they want to know how industry works. How do I get into it? How's industry different from academics? So for those in academics, we provide an opportunity to see how industry works and connect them with industry scientists. Sometimes the questions come from PIs that are like, oh, wow, I found this really interesting molecule that has these really interesting properties. I wonder how you would go about trying to commercialize or make this a clinical product. And then the flip side is in industry, we're trying to apply, it's all applied science. How do we take science that's known and apply it to the field of medicine? But we rely on academics to do a lot of the innovation. And what are the new tools that are available in our tool belt that could help us answer critical questions? And most of this tool building comes from the academic side. And having the industry scientists look across the aisle to see what's going on and what are the really cool things going on in academia helps promote further innovation in the private sector. So it's really a complementary approach where both sides could learn from the other.
And also, I would just say, besides the transfer of ideas and collaboration, it's also just been this ecosystem where people who are looking to transfer from academia can find jobs. And this environment has been a little crazy over the last year and a half or 2 years with layoffs, things like that. People can network here and find jobs that are very in tune to what they've been researching. Maybe one other company lays off their cancer researchers, but then another company is growing it, like AstraZeneca, or another company might be growing in the epigenetic field and pick up some of these people that may have been let go from another organization.
As we know, most people get their jobs through their network. It's unlikely usually to just apply cold at a company that you're interested in and get hired. Usually you know somebody or somebody knows somebody else who can help you connect with somebody else. And these events obviously can foster that sort of relationships. That makes a lot of sense. What unique qualities do you think Boston has? And I know you mentioned, John, that you're in San Francisco and New York as well sometimes, but specifically in Boston, what do you think it makes it so special?
Bryan, you've been here longer. I don't know if you want to start off, and then I'll give my perspective.
Well, I think it's two things. One, it's the academic center. There's so many universities in this area, and there's so much research going on in the academic side. And it could be a chicken and egg thing because of all of the academic. There's a lot of spin-offs, and there's a lot of smaller companies. And then from smaller companies, we have larger companies. So the greatest concentration of biotechs is in Kendall Square in the whole world. And if you think about it that way, it's really the Silicon Valley of biotech. Boston is probably unique in that you could get on the T at any time on the Red Line, and as I'm walking down the aisles, I see somebody inevitably reading a biotech paper. I see a protein gel. I see sequencing data that people are poring over. And I think having just such a concentration of people, and it's a competitive area. It's a competitive market. You have a lot of really sharp, really smart people in this area that are all thinking about these same questions and problems. And I've been at companies where I'm the only person working in a particular area, and then I've been at other companies where there's a group of us, and it seems like there's something about having a certain number of people to really explode. And there is this need that you could be a genius, but if you're on an island all by yourself, you're not going to accomplish as much as if there's 10 of you who are average smart. That combined groupthink really comes together and just launches innovation. And I think that's what we have here in the Boston areas. You have this collective spirit of motivated, smart, and it's not that there's not motivated, smart people elsewhere, but you just have so many of them here that it really helps to ignite that fire.
And there'll be more too. There's so many buildings being constructed in Boston these days, lab sites, office buildings for big pharma, small biotech. So it's quite exciting.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that kind of really makes Boston unique is there's kind of the lines between academia and industry kind of disappear. Kind of like our organization. You have a lot of PIs that also have their own startups. There's just a lot of collaboration that doesn't really happen. Let's say in like San Francisco or New York, where you have academic pockets that don't really communicate with the industry. Professionals. So I think that's kind of, translated into our group, where I don't know if it would be the same if we were in San Diego or the Bay Area, getting this, I guess, unique mix of industry and academia working together and sharing ideas. The other perspective I'd like to say is that I think that, Boston really works on real problems, and there's also this kind of rinse and repeat when you're successful with an idea, moving on to another idea that's, you're going to use your same formula to grow another successful company. I think in the Bay Area, you have a lot of these companies where they're more of based on some sort of, crazy idea, lightning in a bottle, one and done unicorn, where you have, I think a lot of people that, start a company and then they have, 3 more companies that are kind of on the same type of, therapeutic, or there's a lot of, reproducible, I think, ideas here. And then also working on real science that's going to show results. And I think we're more of a conservative biotech, I guess, community than the Bay Area, where they're working on kind of these moonshot ideas.
We're more into the nitty gritty of the science.
Building on proven science. I think a lot of the startups here have strong foundations that allow them to have higher rates of success, whereas in the Bay Area, some of these ideas are more of hey, I'm looking to just change the world through this grand concept. Not that they're not here in Boston, like companies like Colossal, things like that bring back the mammoth, but it's based on someone like George Church, who's been working on tons of different startups, and he can now attempt some of these more lofty ambitions.
That's a good point. Yeah, that can make sense. I think the goals for biotech startups in Boston might be more, I don't want to say maybe practical, more realistic, reasonable, as opposed to the moonshots in California, let's say. Interesting.
Where New York also, I would say, is also more based towards, med devices, hospital, clinical things, just, based around the many hospital beds that are in New York and different medical centers as well. And also, one more example, DC is more based on government research, like NIH, Department of Defense, FDA stuff. So that's what makes Boston unique as far as I'm concerned.
I appreciate your answers. And you talked a bit about the job market, in terms of people looking for jobs, especially nowadays. Are you seeing that getting worse, getting better? Are the people that are losing jobs able to find new jobs quickly in your experience perspective?
I think a couple of years, the job market was super hot and it was kind of a crazy time. And people were changing jobs very, very rapidly. And the other thing that I saw then was kind of a title inflation, where because so many companies were hiring and there was such a demand for people, that I saw a lot of people going kind of beyond what the traditional sort of grade level might be. And I think over the last year and a half, that's really slowed down. And I think the job market's been pretty lean. And I would say maybe in the last 6 months, 3 to 6 months, I've seen it loosening up again. And I think these things tend to be cyclic. And I think we were at a real minimum a few months ago. But I think we're slowly kind of coming out of that now. And it may slow down right around the holidays. The holidays is typically a poor time to look for a job. But I think come the spring, maybe March, April, I would expect things maybe start loosening up even more.
Yeah, just to reiterate kind of what Bryan's saying, I think, for a while there was a little bit of a bubble in the industry, but, there was kind of a correction that happened where companies tried to get more lean and, I guess maybe shed some of the fat thinking that there was going to be a recession. So, it seems like, now things are easing up, from macroeconomics perspective. So I think, again, I think we'll see, more jobs being created. But again, I think people are more cautious compared to how things were maybe a year ago. There was a lot of, stuff going on during the pandemic where money was being shuffled around, and, that's, especially for diagnostics companies, things like that, for, detecting COVID, that's not around anymore. So there's been a shift in focus, and the pharma and biotech VCs and companies are all adjusting.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how quickly things can shift as well, right?
Yeah.
It's only a matter of a couple years where this tidal wave of change has happened. In terms of partnerships for your society organization, what kind of partnerships are actually seeking to help develop your community, build out your membership, sponsorship?
Yeah, so I mean, from a, I guess, perspective of supporting our events, we've been working with different vendors that work in the space. We try to find vendors that aren't really competing, but are offering, different technologies that really keep us on the cutting edge, from, single cell to spatial to 3D genomics. We try to partner with, cutting edge technologies that are going to really, help people grow and kind of exchange ideas of, how they can be utilized. But I guess from the other perspective of partners, from groups that we want people to join, is any biotech or big pharma company, or even little pharma or little biotech company that has an interest towards epigenetics, which seems to be a lot of them now. We don't really discriminate as long as you have some sort of interest, or you're I like to say epi-curious. We'll take you into the group. We have people that even don't have backgrounds in biotech that we're joining just because they want to learn more about the industry. Bryan, do you have anything else that you want to say about partnerships?
Yeah, so I think there's different types of partnerships. And I think what you were just talking about was more of like the corporate sponsorships and corporate partners we've had. But then we also have an increasing number of academic partners who, I'm not speaking universities, but faculty members who have an interest in promoting coming together of research ideas. So one of the latest people to join our steering committee was John Rinn from University of Colorado. So having phenomenal professors like him join our group helps promote the authenticity of the program. And as we're looking with an eye towards the future of how we can bring people together for things like symposia, having professors who regularly interact and collaborate with other faculty members is an advantage to us. So we're seeking additional faculty members who would be interested in joining us. And then from the industry side, getting industry scientists involved. Bob Copeland gave a phenomenal talk, and he's a real leader in the field, but from the industry side. So getting that industry perspective, and the more people we have involved from the industry, then it's easier to get really interesting industry leaders to also present. So, maintaining that balance of academic and industry people, and then as John focused on, people like Cantata, Active Motif, Biomodal, 10Next Genomics, having these industry leaders buy into this really helps us plan events and bring people together.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like, the Boston Epigenics Society and you both and your team are sort of a catalyst for academia and industry. However, one thing I wonder is when some of these academic researchers decide maybe they want to start their own biotech company, do you have a investor group that you help them connect with, or is there a investor type of partnership that you might be interested in as well? Because, as we all know, biotech costs a lot of money, especially developing a drug. It's not something that you can do in just a few years. It takes many years. So having the financing to do that in a reliable way is an important part of, I guess, the process or the journey for biotechs.
I think that's a great area that we could grow into. And clearly a lot of the people who join our webinars have that entrepreneurial spirit. And I think one of the things that's great about the biotech space is there is so much entrepreneurial spirit. So I think that's a real interest of members of the Boston Epigenics Society. And it's probably an area that we could stand to grow into. And it hasn't been something we've actively pursued, but I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, just to kind of reiterate what Bryan's saying, for now, like we've just been mainly focusing on sharing ideas and collaborating, but we just got started and we see so much potential in this organization that we could probably, connect, doing pitch nights and start doing more entrepreneurial things. But again, yeah, we're just getting started and excited to, move in directions like that. It just takes a little bit more organization. And I think it'd be a great idea to, we have members from, Flagship Pioneering and Atlas Ventures. They're there. I think it's just a matter of connecting the dots and figuring out, to what end and, what direction we'd want to go with sort of having those, I guess, venture capital outlets and financing options.
Yeah, and I know that VibeBio would be interested in also, talking to you more about those opportunities. And there are plenty of ways that I think we can help as well. So I'm happy to dive into that in the conversation, maybe over a couple beers, guys.
Yeah, we'd love to do a Shark Tank night. I think there's lots of we were joking earlier that just the speakers that we've had would be an amazing scientific advisory board for any company.
Absolutely. And if you think about, that gap you were mentioning about the academic researchers and industry, well, there's also a gap between, starting a company and understanding what resources you need to effectively, work with your employees or hire people and manage your finances. So there's certainly a lot of help, I think, that we can provide to these companies. So I appreciate this conversation, Bryan and John. I think it was really helpful. Hopefully the audience thinks so as well. I just want to let everybody know that you can check us out on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience before we conclude here today?
Yeah, I would like to promote our next speaker is going to be Dr. Sigal Kadak at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. And she's going to be doing a webinar on January 31st. So we hope that people will tune in for that.
Yeah, and just like, the theme of our club, she has a background in both academia at Dana-Farber, but a founder of a large biotech focused on epigenetics called Ring Therapeutics.
Very cool. Thanks a lot, gentlemen. Really appreciate your time, and I hope you both have a great day.
Yeah, enjoy.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you for setting this up.